a sleeping giant, driving mass adoption in Africa. Emerging economies stand to benefit the most from independent, borderless blockchain applications. Let the games begin. Moderated by TIFFANY WANG, Tribe Accelerator. Richard ELLS, Electroneum. José Maria MACEDO, AMAZIX Capital. Rod Alexander, IOHK. MICKY WATKINS, World Mobile Chain. ACON, ACOIN.
Wherever you want, please take your seat. Alrighty. All right. Are we excited about this panel? Woo! All right. I'm super excited, guys. You know, really a star lineup here. So as we have many panelists, so I would like to have the first part of this panel to do some rapid fire questions. They actually don't know the questions yet, so let's see what we get as a spontaneous answer. So the rapid fire questions rule, you can only answer to the question with 2 to 4 sentences max. Let's see how many questions we can get through. So first of all, tell us about you, yourself, not business, not yet, all right? And why Africa matters to you personally. Akon, do you want to start?
Yes. I'm African, first and foremost. Second, I wanted to see Africa develop in a major way and felt like I could be a tremendous catapult to that, being who I am and utilizing my celebrity as a way of doing that. And I think Africa really matters to me because I really, truly believe that it's the future.
Great example. Thank you. Richard.
Super. I'm Richard ELLS from Electroneum. My passion has been technology, always, 20 years in technology. So cryptocurrency was a natural place to go, and cryptocurrency solves a lot of the world's problems, so I like to be part of it.
Thank you.
Mickey Watkins, World Mobile Chain. The stifling innovation and the prices that the Africans have to pay is something that I've been working with for the last 10 years, and I'm ready to make a change.
Rod Alexander, IOHK. I've been working and doing all sorts of things in Africa since around 1990, so some 29 years now, and throughout my travels everywhere in the world, I've not found people who are more innovative and more able than I have in Africa, and for that reason, if there's an opportunity through blockchain or any other initiative to ensure that people in Africa get a fair crack of the whip, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
I'm JOSÉ MACEDO. My background's sort of in economics and game theory, and as soon as I came across blockchain technology, I realized it was sort of applied economics and could facilitate a new way for us to coordinate as human beings. And I think this is, Africa matters to me because I think it's one of the most important applications of this technology in a continent that's been sort of hamstrung for years by poor institutions and middlemen that couldn't be trusted. And I think blockchain can really help there more than almost anywhere else.
Great. Very great. Stick to the rules, huh? So the second question is, tell us about what you're doing right now there, right? So tell us what and which part of Africa. You know, sometimes people say, you know, we talk about Africa, but Africa's big, right? You have East Africa, you have Sub-Saharan Africa. Talk about specifically where in Africa and why did you even start that business? So what, where in Africa, and why? So this time, do you want to start from that end?
Sure. So I guess these guys are working more directly in Africa. We as an advisory company, help support projects like these that are looking to change the world. And from my perspective, I guess a high-level intro, just to expand on what I said previously. I think blockchain is really cool because it allows you to sort of provide services that used to have to be provided by a trusted middleman only through the self-interest of decentralized and disparate actors, right? And so you see that with Bitcoin, doing that with disintermediating central banks, with open finance, disintermediating financial intermediaries. You see that with Web3. And I think, and you can even see that sort of in the birth story of crypto itself, right? It came about in the wake of the biggest financial crisis of all time, since the Great Depression at least. And obviously it then grew in one of the times of greatest financial responsibility with central banks, QE, et cetera. And as much as a critic as I am of central bank policy, I also think that it's kind of the definition of a first world problem when it comes to Africa, right? In Africa, we have, 13 of the 20 countries with the highest inflation are in Africa. 80% of adults in Africa don't have access to semi-formal financial services, and over 90% of land in Africa is actually unregistered. Now, how can you save if you don't have faith that your currency is stable and won't inflate? How can you choose to build in your land if it's not registered as yours? And how can entrepreneurs build businesses without access to capital, without access to financial services, right? And I think...
Okay, we have the first rule breaker, 2 to 4 sentences, huh?
No worries. Oh, it was 2 to 4 still. I didn't get it. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, please.
In terms of what we're doing and where, earlier this year in Ethiopia, we trained a cohort of people from Ethiopia and Uganda in our formal programming language for one of the blockchains that we build in Haskell code. It was a cohort of 19 Ethiopian women and 4 Ugandan women. We've since then offered all of them job contracts, and so our developers in Ethiopia and Uganda are Ethiopian and Ugandan women. In terms of other things we're doing, we're about to enter into a pilot program with the Ethiopian government where we will produce a stable coin tied one-to-one to the Ethiopian currency, the Ethiopian birr. And the key thing about that is that if we're serious about mass adoption of cryptocurrencies, people need a reason to hold them. And at present, they're a niche asset globally, even more so in Africa. But if people have a reason to hold them, because holding that asset allows you to more conveniently pay your regular utility bills, to sort out your vehicle registration, to do all sorts of things, then we're on the road potentially to mass adoption. And finally, why? We have a very strong focus on the way we should do business. Historically, Africa has been beset by relationships with organisations in the West which rely on, in that equation, one party in that equation being the expert and the other not being the expert. This may be heresy, but we also believe that's the case. But we believe the experts are the people on the ground in Ethiopia, the people whose day-to-day lives are beset with problems and a lack of convenience, government institutions and innovators who have already shown great resilience. They are the experts. And so when we work in these countries, we do 3 things. Very simple things, because it's IOHK. 1, we ask questions. 2, we listen. And 3, we learn on the basis that they're the experts, not us. Not once in all of our work in Ethiopia or any other developing country have people there said to us, we want technology. They may say, we've got this problem. This is a pain. We can't do this. They want utility, the ability to do things. And we help them to do that. And we also help them to capacity build. So in Ethiopia and Uganda, there are people from those countries writing code and developing their own solutions. And that's our approach.
Thank you, Rod.
We're stripping it back to the basics. We're connecting the unconnected. 50% or more of the world are not connected. We're all speaking about blockchain-related activities, and actually it starts with people being included. So we're talking about mass adoption, which is an incredible thing, but actually we should be speaking about mass inclusion. So we're seeing many innovations come out inside the space, and they're definitely changing the way that the world is working. But the communications sector, it was built so quickly, in such a rush, and in the quest to be connected, there's a big problem. And that problem is the business models that the mobile network operators have developed, from the shareholders and their requirements downwards, and the GSMA spectrum with the International Telecom Union. Those business models do not allow the existing mobile network operators to cater for the 50% of the world that's not connected. So we've put together the commercial, the regulatory arm, lawyers, a team on the ground. We have Andrew and RJ. RJ, thank you very much, flew in from Tanzania today, in renewable energy. And literally, we're able to change the scope of the way things work and deliver a mobile network at up to 10 times less capex and opex, and using blockchain technology not as the promotion tool, but actually as the vehicle that allows people to have transparency. And we're going to deliver. We're right now in Tanzania. We're rolling out ourselves, self-funded. We have deals in Rwanda and Botswana in line. We've been invited to several other African countries. We're dealing with the very, very top of the scope because they've seen the injustice that's happening. And they also see that the MNOs, even if they wanted to help, they can't. So Google, Facebook, Microsoft have made it all possible for us to get to where we are with unlicensed spectrums. And watch this space. Half the world is waiting for our product.
Thank you, Mickey. Richard.
We are a financial inclusion cryptocurrency. We've always seen that cryptocurrency can solve this problem, but there's an awful lot of people in this space that use the word unbanked. We're going to bank the unbanked. We hear it from virtually every project now. But it's not a case of build it and they will come up. We know this because we built it, we've got it out on the ground. We've spoken to people and enabled small vendors to pay for things. We've got instant payment on our app. We've built our app around usability. But still, you were saying about custodying and making it easier to hold. But actually, what we found is, having been there, you also need to find a way to make it easier to earn so that you get this cyclic ecosystem. So you've got a way of earning it, spending it, and then re-earning it, so it travels round and round in a system. So that's effectively what we've done. We've written a platform to enable people to sell their digital skills online, so and get payments take place in credit cards, and it gets remitted in ETN. Then you can buy things already through the system. So in Nigeria, Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, you can top up your mobile phone directly with ETN, and hopefully we'll be moving out into utility companies, etc. So exciting times.
Thank you, Richard. Akon?
Yes, so what, when, and where? What we're doing actually is a lot, so I'm going to probably just kind of condense it down to the top 3 up into the top 1. From entertainment, we built the Afrobeat scene starting in Nigeria, leading into the States now, which is doing very, very well. Branched off of that to do energy, which we're doing solar energy projects all throughout Africa, mainly sourcing the rural areas of all the major cities in Africa, building small solar mini hubs that led into paying prepaid energy, that led me into ACOIN, which is our cryptocurrency that we want to be able to utilize to stimulate young entrepreneurs throughout Africa and give them tools to develop for the future. Where we're doing it, pretty much all throughout West Africa, that we've pretty much lodged into 17 countries, and we're now going into East Africa, starting with Rwanda, which we've put together an amazing pilot there for the lighting and educational projects that we're doing, and slowly going to introduce the cryptocurrency there as well. How long I've been doing it? Basically, when we've been doing the energy side since 2014. The concept of crypto came around 2013. And ultimately, the music part, I've been doing that forever, of course. That opened the doors for everything that we're doing now.
I love that. I have to say that I've spoken in many conferences in blockchain, and I always hoped that there would be a conference panel on Africa. And really, really a big shout out to this conference. Personally, I spent about a decade in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia investing in commodity and energy. And I was very fortunate later on to be awarded by Thomson Reuters for some investments. And then that paved my way to really become an early stage angel investor in the technologies today that I believe can drive actually the change in this emerging markets. Personal experience told me that you actually need to do things slightly differently in emerging markets compared to, for example, US markets I'm working in right now. So move from the rapid fire questions, I want to open to this collaborative discussion here. Share with us the experience, how you have done things differently, specifically in the regions of Africa that make you successful. Who want to take up this question first?
I can start.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when you're dealing with underdeveloped or non-developed countries, you can't do it the regulatory ways that you've done it in developing countries. And I think this is the mistake that a lot of Fortune 500 companies has made going into places like Africa, because they would create models that worked in the States and try to apply them in Africa. It clearly doesn't work that way. You have to know the people, you have to know the environment, and you have to know the lifestyle in which they live and how they're living it in those circumstances, and then you find solutions that fit or actually works in better for them in that particular circumstances. And the best way to do that, you have to be on the grounds. You have to be in Africa. You have to live with them. You have to eat with them. You have to understand their cultures. You have to understand the tribal rivalries, the religion aspect of it, their ways of life. All that plays, and all that is a factor as to how you bring your business into that market for it to be accepted. And I think a lot of times people just bring, turns of ship someone there that they feel can spend a little bit of time, or feel like they can find a specific local that can give them the information. But that only happens and successful maybe 1 out of 1,000,000 times. You actually have to find your time to go in there, understand the market that you're in, and build programs that actually fits. That's what's worked for us. Being that I have been African and I've kind of know the people, being the fact that I am one of them, helped me to accelerate that process a lot quicker. But what we did for our projects, what we do, we go to every area and we actually hire the locals themselves, we train them and bring them a part of the project. So not only they're receiving it for their benefit, but we're also training them to keep it sustainable. And I think that's worked a lot for us.
Fantastic.
One of the things we believe in is that cryptocurrency's got a pretty bad rap. I think it can solve a lot of problems, but it's still largely people are nervous about it, worried about it, think maybe it's a scam. So one of the things that is important to us and has got us hundreds of thousands of users in that continent is by giving away a small amount of cryptocurrency. So it's not a block reward per se, but it is a reward and it has some real world value. So if you can save that up and top up your phone once, as soon as you've done that, you and your peer group immediately know this isn't a scam, it's real, it has some real value. So I think that's something that can be done as well.
Great.
Hi. So it's not just the people on the ground in Africa suffering. The governments are suffering, the retailers, the distributors are suffering, everybody's taking advantage. So our approach is bringing a product that's needed rather than a product that's wanted. So as we develop the relationships in the countries that we've developed, it's clear that the government needs transparency, it's clear that the government needs instant reconciliation and remittance so they understand taxes much better than relying on a third party to tell them what they owe so they can bill. Africa's an interesting place, How do you become a millionaire in Africa? You go with $1 billion. So unless you know what you're doing, unless you have the right people, unless you have a real product, you've got to navigate this space, and experience counts for everything, and connections, as Akon will profess, is also a big thing. But ultimately, doing something good that everybody recognizes as benefiting the country, while still being virtuous and profitable for everybody involved, is a good way.
In terms of the changed approach that's necessary in Africa, I think there are two things really. As I indicated earlier, and as Akon's referred to as well, you really need subject experts on the ground. It's necessary to understand that the experts, when you're working in Africa, aren't clever kids in Silicon Valley. The experts are the people living the life on a day-to-day basis, whether they're just inconvenienced by not having the utility that they require, or that army of incredibly talented engineers and entrepreneurs that are suffering because there's no backing, because Africa, by and large, is the land that global finance has forgot, deliberately. So that's the first thing. It's necessary to really understand what's required by speaking to the people on the ground. And the second thing is it's necessary to stop and realise that the way we operate in the West, often trying to dodge some of the regulatory restrictions put in place to prevent the development of an economy around blockchain and cryptocurrencies, aren't necessarily the case in Africa. There's an opportunity to engage with governments, as we tend to do, and to say, what are the problems? What would help? How can we add value in order that we can end up in a situation where those countries and the blockchain economies in those countries are self-sufficient?
Thank you, Rob.
I think these guys covered it pretty well. They have a lot more experience than me in this area, so I think I'll defer to their answers.
Do you mind if I just throw one more point in about that? I think some of the regulatory environments as well, people have seen Bitcoin particularly, but cryptocurrency as a potential way of capital outflow, money leaving their country. But this is actually an amazing way for value to enter the country, for money to enter the country. And I think when that is realized, I think the regulators are going to be more accepting.
This is a very good comment. It's related to we're about on the time. So really concluding notes I want to hear from everybody on the panel. I remember 10 years ago, it is really NGO, IFC, really centralized the power to really support, grow, and develop Africa. And today we're talking about mass adoption of blockchain in Africa. So tell us why the world needs to understand Africa right now. Tell us why the world needs to know about Africa, go to Africa, and develop technologies. Very quick, concluding comment, one each.
Well, corporations are greedy, right? And if we can appeal to that greed, you'll always do well. So bear in mind there's a huge market of people that would be genuinely happy, very, very happy indeed to earn $5 an hour. And if you could get somebody earning $3 or $4 an hour, they might be jumping for joy. Even people earning $2 or $3 an hour could be jumping for joy. So actually, there's a huge market of people that if you can upskill, those people can provide a service to the global north, and both sides can benefit. So I think we can benefit from corporate greed by providing that service.
Who else?
I think people need to understand and work in Africa for two reasons. First of all, if you're serious about working with the best talent, go to Africa. It's not the case that the talent and entrepreneurs and engineers and people who devise solutions are just as good in Africa. They're just as good as those in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, but with one big difference. In order to get to a place where they're able to try and demonstrate proof of concept of their innovations, they've already developed the kind of incredible resilience and ingenuity to get to that place that others in the developed world don't have to go through. That's the first reason.
Thank you, Rob. I mean, I would love to actually continue this conversation, but very quickly, if any other comments, one sentence each person, because they already gave me the notice it's ended. So any other?
I just keep it as brief as possible. If you look at all the major corporations in developing countries, they've maxed out their everything, from land to market share. There's nothing left to create in those markets, whereas Africa's a clean white slate, and you can start from scratch and build from the bottom. The opportunity is there. You can't even deny it.
And ready to adopt the technology, which is the key part here. So we're very lazy when it comes towards taking care of our privacy because it's convenient. You know, we want fast internet, we want WhatsApp because everyone speaks on WhatsApp. We use Signal, but then there's a bug in Signal that when someone dials you and they press mute and they have a modified client. So these people, the Africans, they're disenfranchised, they're disincluded, and we're starting in sub-Saharan Africa with 1 billion people. From that 1 billion, only 150 million have access to adequate internet and adequate connectivity, and then it's at a huge price.
So, which is also the key. You got 2 billion people in the next 5 years that you can market to. You're not going to find anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, thank you. So we all believe this is a huge market, and it is a market that can leapfrog to the future.
1,000%.
Definitely.
Good word.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, the great panel.